President Biden revealing the real intentions behind the bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act while trying to defend it yesterday. Watch this.
My desire to increase U.S. manufacturing and jobs in America is not about China. I'm not concerned about China. It wasn't designed to hurt China. It was designed so we didn't have to worry about whether or not we had access to semiconductors.
Supporters of the bill last year cited China as the reason for the legislation. Reuters is reporting that the Chinese yuan was the most widely used currency for cross-border transactions in China last month. That's the first time ever that the yuan has taken over the dollar in China transactions. The yuan used in over 48% of transactions, while the dollar was used in 47% in transactions. That's cross-border transactions out of China. Joining me right now to talk more about that is Atlas Organization founder and the author of The Decisive Decade, Jonathan D.T. Ward's new book out right now, Decisive Decade. Jonathan, great to have you. Thanks very much for being here.
Hi, Maria. Good to be with you.
Does that concern you that China has now replaced the dollar with its cross-border transactions? You know that it's gotten the Brazilians to start using the real and the yuan. It's gotten the Saudis to use the yuan when doing oil transactions.
Well, in terms of the use of the yuan in China's own economic transactions, I think it's less concerning. I mean, the yuan is still only about 4% of all global cross-border transactions, whereas the dollar is about 85%. So I don't think we're going to see a problem there yet. But what really does matter is that China's very focused on creating an alternative economic order. I mean, they're seeking to use the center of gravity that they've created in global trade to globalize the RMB. And if we allow this to go on for the long haul, if we fundamentally lack a counter strategy to China's own economic strategy, then we will see, I think, much greater globalization of the RMB. And they're also looking to sanction-proof their economy. I mean, their dual circulation strategy is designed to tie global supply chains back to China while at the same time indigenizing major critical industries. So they have a strategy for how to play the global economic game to their overwhelming advantage. And we simply lack one, which is what I've tried to outline in The Decisive Decade. I mean, what are we going to do to actually dismantle China's global economic and military strategy? And I think we're not seeing that yet from the executive branch.
No, we're not. They're not. We are. We've been talking about this for years, but China has been able to get inside the gates of America, whether it be through academia, through Hollywood, corporate America, or all of this surveillance. Chinese police reportedly raided the U.S. management consulting firm Bain Company's offices in Shanghai, taking away computers and phones. I mean, Bain is not a Chinese company. They have an office in Shanghai, and the offices were raided. Back in the U.S., the House Select Committee on China demanding answers from the FBI in a new letter on the secret Chinese police stations operating across this country, Jonathan. On the one hand, your thoughts about China and the Chinese police going into the offices of Bain Company in Shanghai. And then this police station situation. The FBI now wants answers. We understand that the one in New York City was shut down, but there are 6 others.
Well, look, with regard to the Bain raid in China, in Shanghai, I mean, there's a whole lot more of this coming. Let's be perfectly honest about this. This is just the beginning of China's retaliation against American firms in the China market. And I laid this out in The Decisive Decade with a couple of speeches that haven't really been translated before, where Chinese officials talk about having America's soft underbelly or soft ribs in their hands. And they cite different companies in different sectors that they can go after when they seek to put pressure on the United States. So, look, I mean, I told you all this. I mean, I hate to say it, but if you're an American company and you're in China and you seek to grow in China, I mean, forget it. This is really not a good strategy. It's not going to work out. I think the companies that are planning on being in China in the long haul are going to be very disappointed with what actually happens in that market. And you know, the next phase is, I think shareholders now need to look at corporate exposure to China and understand the real risks, understand the real risks of the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, you can look at McKinsey reports, which have basically sold the world the growth of the Chinese middle class, and they just do not account for the real nature of the Communist Party system and the risks that are inherent to any multinational that bets its growth strategy, its revenue strategy, or even its supply chain strategy on the People's Republic of China. I mean, we can look at what happened in Russia after Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I mean, once again, the CCP is talking about invading neighbors. companies were able to either leave if they had a small footprint, or they took massive write-downs. I mean, look at BASF, German chemical company, which lost an entire business unit worth $7 billion in the Russia market. I mean, imagine if you're a major U.S. multinational that is playing to be in Beijing for, in China for the long run. I mean, that is a real risk.
That's the issue, Jonathan. A lot are. I mean, you and I have spoken about corporate America not getting the memo on the national security issues that surround this threat. And, I had a pretty aggressive interview with Jamie Dimon a couple of years ago, and I said to him, you can't do what you're doing. You're Jamie Dimon. You've got to set the tone, the largest bank, and yet the tone is set from the top. I mean, they're going to do whatever they can do to get away with selling to 1.4 billion people. So, these rules need to come from the administration. Isn't that right?
Well, look, we're not having leadership from the White House on this. I mean, Janet Yellen in her speech last week, which I do think was, for the most unfortunate reasons, it was a landmark speech on U.S.-China relations because it demonstrated that we do not have a real grand strategy for dealing with China. I mean, she says there's a world in which, as companies in the U.S. and China challenge each other, our economies can grow, our standards of living can rise, and new innovations can bear fruit. I mean, that's not the world we're living in. We're living in a world in which China's converting economic power into military power. A human rights of atrocities-based surveillance system that the likes of which the world has never seen. And for the administration to basically tell business, hey, it's still okay. I mean, that's going to create serious challenges. So I think it's time for shareholders to go through the same awakening that the Congress has and that the national security community has. And, I think Jamie Dimon's been interesting on this because, I mean, his shareholder letter this year was actually focused on the need for a U.S. economic strategy. So I thought that was very promising. And hopefully we will see more business leaders start to take this matter into their own hands. Because if the White House is not going to give clear guidance, they are going to have to do it on their own account.
And they're not giving clear guidance at all. In fact, the guidance is to just keep on going. Shareholders are understanding it better, but there's all these indexes with Chinese companies in them, and those companies are likely tied to the military because that's the priority in China. So, in effect, those shareholders are funding the expansion of what could be our number one enemy, certainly our number one adversary. That's a fact. And then Chinese leader Xi Jinping calling Ukrainian President Zelensky yesterday for their first conversation since Russia invaded Ukraine over a year ago. Apparently, we're learning that Xi told Zelensky he'll send a peace envoy to Kyiv and other nations to discuss how to reach an end to this war. So, Jonathan, now you've got Xi Jinping trying to look like the power broker, looking for peace, even though you've got, slave labor, apparently, reportedly, going on in China. You've got intellectual property theft. You've got the CCP undermining any critics. I mean, does corporate America understand about disappearing people? Because we've seen a lot of that in China as well. A lot of questions there, Jonathan, real quick.
You've got the raw fact of Beijing's economic and ideological support for Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So I think Zelensky understands that he's on the phone with the man who is backing Putin's war and China's peace proposals. Well, you have to. I mean, there's no way to. I mean, Zelensky at this point is an experienced wartime leader. I think he knows exactly what he's dealing with. And the peace envoy, I mean, if it's bringing the Chinese peace plan that we've all seen, I mean, that's not a real peace plan. So I think Beijing is playing this game in a way that's very convincing and preys upon Western naivete. But hopefully, Zelensky has to win a war.
All right,
that's
we'll
a
leave
different
it there.
thing.
Jonathan, good to see you. As always, you've been spot on this issue. Jonathan D.T. Ward joining us, The Decisive Decade. We'll be right back.